Welcome to Power Summit 2023.
So ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, may I please invite on stage the moderator of this session, Mr. Siddharth Mani, Associate Director, Deloitte India. Can we please put our hands together and welcome our moderator on stage? We'd also like to invite on stage Mr. Dhruv Dhiman, Vice President, Indian Energy Exchange. We'd also like to invite on stage Mr. Prabal Adhikari, Director, Power Trade Department, Nepal Electricity Authority. With a big round of applause, we'd also like to invite on stage Mr. Bikram Singh, Executive Vice President, PTC India Limited. We'd also like to invite on stage Mr. Krishna Bandyopadhyay, ex-CEO, NVVN. And we'd also like to invite on stage Ms. Victoria Delman, Upstream and Advisory Manager, Infrastructure IFC, one more time on stage for valuable inputs in this session as well. So ladies and gentlemen, the stage is all set for this session here at the Power Summit 2023. We're talking about cross-border electricity trade, outlook and opportunities. I hope you do send in your questions through the app. I hope you also participate in the poll through the app itself. And now, without any further delay, may I please hand over the proceeding of this session to our moderator, Mr. Siddharth Mani.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to this very interesting session. I welcome all the esteemed panelists in this session. Before I begin, I'll just request all of you again to download the mobile app that we have for this Power Summit if you have not. In the app, you'll find a lot of interesting things, including the profile of the speakers and also some very interesting questions that need your input as such. So with this, I'd like to begin this session with a slight context on the background of cross-border electricity trade, outlook and opportunities. And to contextualize, I'd just like to put in perspective where we were in the last Power Summit in 2019 and where we are now. So from the last Power Summit in 2019 to now, Nepal has transitioned from an energy deficit situation to a significant surplus during wet season. The installed capacity has risen from 1,200 megawatts in FY 18-19 to over 2,600 megawatt now. From bilateral trade, which was mostly purchased through power trading companies, we are now selling around 400 megawatts through the exchanges. From relying on one market, that is India, we are now exploring alternate markets like Bangladesh. So the journey and the growth has been truly phenomenal. However, at the same time, there has been instances where the full surplus generation available has not been fully utilized. Fully utilized for the overall diversity and the benefit of the region. There were instances in the last wet season where close to 600 megawatt was spilled due to lack of offtake. Close to 10,000 megawatt, we've been hearing in the sessions before, have lined up for PPAs. And there are other challenges as well, including technical, infrastructural constraints, pricing, regulatory barriers, and others. So in this session, we will focus and discuss within the panel on the status of cross-border electricity trade in the South Asian region. What is the outlook for Nepal? What are the opportunities for hydropower exports, both from a power exchange perspective as well as through the power trading companies? We will also discuss some of the leading international practices that we can leverage to enhance cross-border electricity trade in the region. With this, we'd like to start, and just as I mentioned, you will have a few questions on the mobile app. Please, we need your inputs on that. So with this, I'd like to begin the discussion on this very interesting topic, and we'd like to start with Krishna Bandyopadhyay, sir, with most of us know here, as the ex-CEO of NVVN and consultant to Urja Nepal, to give us a perspective on the recent trends in power trade in the South Asian region, and more specifically, what is the scenario with Nepal.
Hello, am I audible? Thank you, moderator. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, panelists. I should thank first IPAN and Urja team, Urja Nepal, for giving me this opportunity to come here and to keep my views. From the morning itself, I am listening a lot of cross-border trade in every panel. So CBET was the main theme. So when I see this CBET in this region, I see the BBIN market. Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal. How much is the market? Market is only 4,500 megawatt. And how much in terms of energy, how much it is? Close to 24 BU. So Bangladesh transaction started in, agreement was signed in 28th February 2012. And supply started in October 2013, 1.5 years later, because that timeline was not commissioned. After that, Bangladesh took the total advantage of the Indian market. So all the power bought by Bangladesh was through the tendering process. So 250 megawatt power Bangladesh took through government to government mode, and the tariff was determined by the CERC, Central Electricity Authority, Central Electricity Regulatory Commission of India. And after that, Bangladesh floated tender and bought 750 megawatt through the tendering process. And in the process, they got the market-driven price. So another 160 megawatt power, it goes from Tripura to Kumilla, Bangladesh. So total 1160 megawatt. So bilaterally, Bangladesh was very active since 2013. Now it is 2023. Till now, Bangladesh has not participated, even if the path is available to participate in the power exchange platform of India. Of course, Bangladesh is in the process. Similarly, if we see Nepal transaction started in 2016 with 80 megawatt flow through the DM line. With the commissioning of the DM line, first transaction took place through 80 megawatt. From this 80 megawatt to 800 megawatt, both ways. Nepal is the first country in this region. They took the advantage of this new regulation of day-ahead market platform of power exchange. A regulation came in February 2021, and they started taking participation in April 2021. That means only 2 months gap, they started buying power from this platform. And they started similarly selling power November 2021. So buying and selling, both NEA started doing in the same line. So all benefit of the Indian market, of course challenges are there. They started doing that. Their first sale transaction was only 39 megawatt. Now I think they got 452 megawatt of power they can sell in the power exchange market of India. So this way, if you see Bhutan almost 70% power is allocated to the distribution companies of India. But small power they sell through the private players. But Bhutan has started buying power during the rainy season, during the dry season. That means Jan, February and March. So Nepal and Bhutan both are participating in the day-ahead power exchange market of India and taking that market opportunities. But I will concentrate and I will tell that Nepal is most dynamically utilizing this DM line. No other country in this region, South Asian region, when I see LTMS, means Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. When I see GCC, means Gulf Coordination Council, or when I see South African Power Pool, no country does this way the way Nepal did it. The same DM line, they optimally and dynamically used it. Means when they felt it, they drawn power or sold power bilaterally. When they felt it, they purchased or sold power through the power exchange platform. So they are utilizing both these domains systematically and very intelligently. So this experience of Nepal will go a long way in the future because many IPPs, they are in the pipeline, they want to participate in the power market of India in future. If they want to reap the maximum benefit, this experience of NEA will be very handy. Because simultaneously using bilateral market as well as the power exchange market is not very easy. So traditionally we talk a lot about this CBET market, but something new is required to be introduced in this market. In my opinion, what I find in CBET, what is required? Innovation and new ideas. And third is use of technology. Why I say innovation and new ideas? Because traditionally we think cross-border trade to happen, we need physical connectivity between these two countries. In that respect, Nepal and India has 1000 megawatt DM line. India-Bangladesh is line almost full. We have two connectivity, one Tripura Komilla, another is Baharampur-Veramera, 1000 megawatt HVDC. But these lines are almost full because they have booked open access for the long term. There is no way to take power. Of course, small quantum of power can flow. Why can flow? Because the first transaction of Bangladesh was a capacity contract. And rest all contracts were energy contract. Because of that capacity contract, some power is remaining underutilized through that line, so that line can be utilized. So when I say innovation and creativity is required to see these CBET transactions in a new perspective, you have to see power purchase agreement, how you are entering into, how you are obtaining DA approval, how you are setting your commercial terms and conditions in place. Because all these three things are interlinked. And all these three things can give you advantage to enhance the CBET, even with the existing setup. Everybody is now thinking about why this transaction is taking place between two countries only, not the multi-country transactions. Multi-country transactions, I think in near future will take place among Nepal, India and Bangladesh. So two transactions are just in the tunnel. I think it will happen very quickly, and for that Mr. Probal is here, he will throw more light. So what I find in this, my take will be in CBET to enhance this thing, creativity, innovation and use of technology is most important, apart from investment. If investment is there, new line will definitely come, and in investment also creativity can be put into, so that it could be most optimally used and cost is most economical. So time is limited. I will stop here. I'll be happy to take more questions when time comes.
True.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for throwing light on how the transition has happened in the region and how Nepal has leveraged the cross-border electricity trade regulations to the extent possible. Thank you so much, sir. We'll come back with a few questions later. But I'll now move on to Prabal Adhikari, sir, Director of Power Trade at NEA, to throw some light on what has been Nepal's trade with India, what is its outlook more importantly, and any of the challenges that he foresees to overcome in the process.
Thank you, Siddharth. I'm very glad to talk on this important session, cross-border power trading with India and in this region. In fact, we are in the journey. This is a relentless journey in cross-border power trading. In the recent years, cross-border power trading with India has been intensified because the domestic generation of Nepal has been increasing. Every year, more and more hydropower projects are being commissioned and getting integrated into Nepal's system. As Nepal's domestic demand is not very high, we need cross-border power trading for the surplus power sale to India, our neighboring country. In that mission, we have got very huge success in the recent years, since the guidelines for import-export of electricity 2018 was introduced by India. Soon after the issuance of this guideline, Central Electricity Regulatory Commission of India issued cross-border trade of electricity regulation in March 2019, and thereafter one important issuance was made in India, that was designated authorities procedure for the approval of import-export of power between India and the neighboring countries. And after that, this designated authorities procedure was issued in February of 2021, and in the same year, from May 1st, 2021, Nepal started commercial transaction in the IEX platform through day-ahead market. It was a very big success for Nepal, and as Krishna Bandyopadhyay has rightly put forward, Nepal is the first country in South Asia to start a transaction in this Indian Energy Exchange of India. We started not only power import from the exchange platform of India, we soon went for the bidirectional power transfer also. That means power export from Nepal to India. And when this power import and export from Nepal was started in 2021, till today, that is in the past 2 years, 2021-22 and 22-23, around 1400 gigawatt of energy has been sold in the day-ahead market of Indian Energy Exchange. And that has enabled Nepal to earn 6.43 billion Indian rupees. This has helped Nepal to reduce the trade deficit with India, and it has paved the way for Nepal to undergo further power export from Nepal in the coming years. In future, as Nepal's installed capacity will be increasing, Nepal will be more and more enabled to export power, surplus power to the Indian electricity market. Not only to the Indian electricity market, Nepal is very much keen to sell its power to other neighboring countries rather than India. We are planning to start cross-border power trading with Bangladesh also. And in the bilateral forum with India, it has been principally agreed that Nepal will soon be exporting power to Bangladesh. But in the initial years, we will be using the Indian infrastructure for the sale of power to Bangladesh. But in future, we are planning to propose some dedicated transmission system between Nepal and Bangladesh via the Indian territory. Cross-border guidelines 2018 issued by India has talked about how it can be possible, and we are looking forward in that direction also. And one important milestone that we have achieved in the bilateral cooperation in power sector between Nepal and India is that Nepal and Indian Prime Minister have issued joint vision statement in 2022, April 2nd. This has paved the way for further cooperation and collaboration between India and Nepal for hydropower development in Nepal, for power trading with India, and beyond India up to the BBIN region. This has talked about renewable energy production, hydropower in particular, and this has talked about making renewable energy production a cornerstone of energy partnership between the two countries. This is very, very positive achievement between the two countries. And this will pave the way for our future through the cross-border power trading. There are lots of good accomplishments we have achieved, but there are challenges in the infrastructure side and also in the policy side. I see that some improvements are required in the guidelines and the policy documents of India. Guidelines for import-export of power issued by India, that in some clauses of the guidelines, it says that international relations may affect the approval of power import and export. No such geopolitical concerns should affect the power trading between the two countries. If power trading is guided by these types of geopolitical issues, like the international relations, this power trading cannot be sustainable. It always becomes fragile and uncertain. And further, it also says that Government of India has reserved the right for import-export of power for the reason of larger policy interest. Those policy interests also should not be considered. Our cross-border guidelines, our cross-border power trading policies should be insulated from these types of geopolitical phenomena. We understand and we hope that in coming years, Government of India will understand this. We are in continuous touch through various bilateral forums, bilateral discussions, and I hope that all these discussions will be fruitful in the years to come. We are in the right direction. We are very hopeful that Government of India understands its very much pivotal role in turning bilateral power trading to trilateral and multilateral in future. Likewise, infrastructure issues are also very much prominent between the two countries. We are continuously moving ahead to add more and more cross-border infrastructures between the two countries. Currently, we have only one 400 kilovolt transmission line, Dhalkebar-Muzaffarpur, but very soon, in the near future, we will have the second cross-border transmission line also, that is Bhutan-Gorakhpur. It will be completed and it will be operational after 3 years. Likewise, 2 more 400 kV transmission line in Arua, Purnia and Lamki Bareilly, they also have planned, and Government of Nepal and Government of India have already agreed in principle that these lines will be built in a given time frames of 27, 28 and 28, 29 fiscal years. While talking about way forwards of this bilateral power trading between the two countries, we need not only the short-term power trading, just trading in the exchange platforms, in the day-ahead market platform. We need medium and long-term power trading between India and beyond. And for that, Government of Nepal has been very keen in signing intergovernment agreement between Government of India and Government of Nepal in the near future, for which there has already been in principle understanding between the two countries through the bilateral mechanism of joint working group and the joint steering committee. We are working in that direction also. And of course, you see, this bilateral power trading only will not be sufficient. In near future, we have to go for trilateral and multilateral power trading. And for that, we have emphasized, we have underscored the power trading with Bangladesh, and we hope that Bangladesh power trading with Nepal also will be materialized very soon. Robust cross-border transmission infrastructures, you see, this should not be undermined. That has very huge importance. And as per USAID USAID for energy integration study, the projection is that by the year 2014, there will be around 43,200 megawatt cross-border transmission capacity in this region of South Asia. So when we have the robust infrastructure, good policy agendas in place, and when our power sector, when our power trading is insulated from the geopolitical concerns, then we hope that there is a bright future for Nepal and for South Asia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for shedding light on the kind of revenue potential that the sector has, especially in the context of the kind of imports of fossil fuels that happens in Nepal. So that's really important to understand. And also the major milestones in Nepal, Bangladesh power trade that we have achieved. Thank you so much, sir. Moving on, we have Mr. Dhruv Dhiman, Vice President of Indian Energy Exchange. And this topic is pretty interesting because everyone is interested to know what are the opportunities that exporters from Nepal have to access in the Indian markets, and especially the energy exchange, IEX and other exchanges in particular. So please.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking this question, Siddharth. It's actually a very pertinent question and very sought after query from almost all the participants which we get here on our exchange. So we have different products where all these participants can actually purchase. Currently, NEA or Nepal is participating only in day-ahead market, which is due to the limitation from cross-border energy trade agreement and the regulation per se, which limits this participation only to a collective segment, and that too only in day-ahead market. So basically, NEA actually gives the requisition on day-ahead basis between a certain time period, and it gets matched to a pool of buyers and sellers, and the price is discovered later in the evening to be delivered, for the energy to be delivered the next day. So this is one market which we actually started back in 2008, and it has been a backbone for the energy trading per se from the exchange perspective. However, in the due course of last 14 years, we have introduced a lot of other products, including real-time market, term ahead market. So these two market caters to different kind of hedging. By the way of hedging, we've just received last year permission from the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission to float the requirements up to 3 months of their requirement. Like Prabal sir was suggesting that they're also looking for a medium-term and a long-term contracts. So from the exchange perspective, currently we are limited up to 90 days of trade. And eventually, once a certain regulation gets implemented, this will further increase to almost 365 days of trading. So up to that particular point, I'm sure the platform is capable of supporting you. Nepal being a hydro-rich state, there will be some time when there will be intermittency. That intermittency can be managed through real-time market, which is so a real-time market basically is you procure or you sell for a near-time market. That's an hour ahead time of a schedule, and it's 30 minutes block you can buy, and there are around 48 options for the entire day which can be traded. So these two segments, they definitely can help, but currently we are limited with the CBET guidelines and the approval which CA gives to the neighboring countries currently. So we are limited with just the day-ahead market, but I'm sure you all are having discussions with the government and the CEA, the designated DEA, to increase this paramount to from day-ahead market to real-time market also, at least because that's also a collective transaction. That could be one of the strategy which as a user, sometimes as a seller, you can hedge your position and optimize your sell and buy also.
Thanks so much, Dhruv. And that's really actually important for stakeholders also to understand the kind of capacity building needs also that it bring when other market products are made accessible to the Nepalese stakeholders, and also the requirements towards change in regulations that are being discussed, obviously. So we now move on to Bikram Singh sir, who is Executive Vice President at PTC India. And PTC has been associated with trade from Nepal for a long time, and it will be important to understand from him the opportunities from a power trader perspective with a special focus on hydropower exports.
Yeah, thanks. So, very true. PTC started the first transaction with Nepal in 2008 through the Tanakpur interconnection, and subsequently the Muzaffarpur-Dalkebar line was commissioned, and trading has been going on. Our earlier CMD, Mr. Deepak Amitabh, shared in the morning that the financial closure for that line happened because of a PPA signed by PTC, and therefore ILFS was able to build that line on the basis of that PPA. So we've been, as PTC, closely associated with the trading, cross-border trading with Nepal. And since then, 2008 till now, a lot of things have happened. And the encouraging part here is that in the last 3 years, the pace has increased drastically of the cooperation. And last 2-3 years have been really very good from the cross-border trading perspective, especially with Nepal. Now, coming to the opportunity perspective, you see, from a trader's perspective and from PTC's perspective, we've always advised all our, generators or buyers since 2004, 2005, that from the portfolio perspective, 70% should be under some sort of a long-term arrangement, and balance 20-30% can be through short-term mechanisms like power exchange or bilateral 1-year contracts or something like that. So that is the desirable mix for a long time. So even the hydro projects which were developed in India, for which PTC did its PPAs in 2004, 2005, two of the larger ones are Karcha Mangtu, which was 1,000 megawatt project, and Tista Urja, which was 1,200 megawatt project. Even in these projects, and of course the projects were built on the basis of PTC's PPA, but in these projects also, we did a long-term tie-up for only 70% of the power. Balance 30% of the power was left for the open market to take the opportunities which come at that point of time. So from the trading perspective, you see, and from the Nepal perspective, the way we've been seeing the development of hydro in Nepal and the potential, and going forward, the kind of capacity which is going to get added. So as a part of the strategy, which has been shared also by Prabal Adhikari ji, that now that is the thought process. So the avenues or options for tying up power under long term from Nepal need to be explored and closed. From the Asian region perspective and hydro perspective, PTC is the only agency here which has done such long-term transactions, primarily with Bhutan. 100% of the power from Bhutan is coming to India through PTC, 2,300 megawatt. And there also, as I said, that 70-30 mix is there. So there also we are advising them to keep some power or some portfolio for the market and balance under long term. Similarly, for Nepal, we would like to suggest that 70% of the power that is coming, which is identifiable, exportable surplus, taking all the demand growth in the country, which has been shared, that it is 15%, which is really very high from that perspective. So taking all those calculations, whatever is surplus over a period of next 10, 15, 20 years that can be forecasted, that should be tied up under long-term contracts. And there has been some discussion on the tariff also since morning, that it has to be competitive, and it has to be, there will be some competition with Bhutan, somebody was saying. So, but still, you see, India is a very big market. We have 4 lakh megawatts of installed capacity with around 2 lakh 10 megawatts of peak demand. So, 2,000 megawatt, 3,000 megawatt from Bhutan, or similarly from Nepal, is not that big an issue if it is offered at the under long-term contracts. So tariff viability is there from Bhutan also, from Nepal also, and both can be absorbed in India. Demand is not a constraint. Another opportunity which I feel from the Nepal perspective is that being rich in hydro, there will always be a situation or when in the lean season, because of the load growth or this thing, there will be always, some risk or some potential of a deficit kicking in at some point of time. So that also, again, our suggestion is that it should be in the range of 70-30. So whatever deficits are projected over a period of time, those deficits, 70% of them should be tied up under a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year contract, so that your visibility is there on the tariff, visibility is there on the power availability, and we are safeguarded from these spikes, short-term spikes which happen and if the prices are extremely low, then the advantage can be taken on the balance 30%. But all 100% to the day-ahead market is a little riskier in the long term. So sir shared some revenue figures. So Nepal has been lucky because that the majority of the sale has come during the time when the prices were on the upside. But over a longer period of time, it may not happen so. So therefore, 70% of the portfolio should be under some medium-term, long-term contracts, and balance then can be left to the market for this. So that in terms of the opportunities, especially with regard to the trading with Nepal are concerned, these are two points where we feel that there is some opportunity to optimize both from the Indian perspective and from the Nepalese perspective, the cross-border trade.
Thank you so much, sir, for bringing this perspective of having a balanced portfolio of long-term and short-term arrangements. Thank you so much. So we now move on to Ms. Victoria Delman, Upstream and Advisory Manager, Infrastructure at IFC. And we also have a precedence that we have one speaker from the preceding session. So Victoria is with us. So Victoria, please, if you can just highlight on your experience, the international experience on cross-border electricity, and also some of the learnings that we could incorporate in the South Asian context.
Great, thank you very much. And I think a lot of the speakers have already covered some of the key points. But I think if we take a step back and actually think about the overarching theme for this afternoon, which is broadening green energy markets, and the stark reality that the very significant proportion of the South Asia energy market is fossil fuel based, and both Nepal and Bhutan have the benefit that they're not in that situation, that they do have they have hydro reserves which they can really leverage. And so going forward, that will become more and more of a priority, I anticipate, for other countries in the region, even if it's not currently, but I think it will become so. So that's the first point. I think that was raised this morning as well, that can there be an opportunity really of the brand of the hydro and leveraging that. The second point I wanted to make is that what's clear from international experience is that you can buy, even if you've got different mixes of energy, you've got different peaks, you've got different pricings, etc. If you create a flexible trading system, then there can be benefits for everybody involved, and that you can benefit from peak demands in one country, or from a surplus in another. So that's something which can also both be beneficial from a supply point of view, but also from a cost point of view. I think another conclusion from international experience is that ultimately having flexibility and having a strong regional power trading mechanism can bring costs down. And so that's something that has been maybe the European Union is not the best example to point at the moment, given the situation there with the fact that's been very reliant on day trading, etc., and not so much on long-term contracts. So I think thinking through what mix that's right between doing day trading or similar versus having long-term PPAs. There needs to be some kind of a balance in the system, and it's kind of getting to that point. But at this, I guess at this point, that's not currently happening. And then I think some of the key things from a point of view of IPPs in Nepal is that there needs to be a more level playing field, and that the private power producers need to be able to get access to the regional trading markets, and certainly at least to being able to cross-border trade, even if it's not with the market. That there needs to be some clarity in the guidelines and a timeline for how the private sector in Nepal is going to benefit from that. And I think the other key element from a domestic point of view is being able to give the IPPs access to the CNI space as well.
Thanks so much, Victoria, for bringing fresh perspectives around the need for having a flexible trading system, leveraging the complementarities, and also providing a level playing field to the IPPs. So thank you so much. I have a few questions for the esteemed panelists, and I'd also encourage the audience, if they have any questions, please post it in the mobile application. Depending on the time, we may take a few of those questions. But the questions that I have for Krishna sir is around the value proposition of hydropower, focusing on Nepal. And just to top it up with another element, is how do we overcome the bottlenecks associated with moving beyond just bilateral, especially if I talk about Nepal, Bangladesh. How do we fast track that particular trade?
Hello. Siddharth, nowadays everybody talks about green hydrogen. So green hydrogen in the lip of everybody. When we hear green hydrogen, that means water we need to break it. So what is required in the input? Some green power. Who provides green power? It could be solar, it could be wind, or it could be hydro. Hydro is most beneficial because of the availability of these power. So whenever we talk about green hydrogen, means some kind of input is required to get this kind of whether green ammonia or green hydrogen. So in that respect, hydro has enormous potential and opportunity for that. One more thing, as far as cross-border trade of power is concerned and hydropower is related. In case of hydropower, in the morning I was listening, people are telling hydropower produced in Nepal will be little more costlier in future. It will be little more costlier in future. But, you know, in the neighboring country in India, a lot of potential of solar power. In 2010, I can remember, solar power cost in India was 17 rupees and 91 paisa. And that time government introduced a provision that solar power will be bundled with the conventional power so that the cost becomes down. And same thing we can do it here also. If solar power, if hydropower can be clubbed with the solar power and supplied with the other country, it will be economically viable and availability and the plant load factor also will increase. Plus, whenever hydropower is supplied, you see the transmission line, 6 months this line will remain underutilized, tentatively. So, in this time, if some other green power can be bundled and supplied it to the customer, end customer, so the overall cost will come down, tariff will come down, and transmission cost also will come down. So that way, hydropower can be meaningful to the neighboring country or to the cross-border country like Bangladesh. Now we are only concentrating only on Bangladesh. In few years, it could be Sri Lanka or it could be Myanmar also. So that can be discussed separately. So these two ways I find hydro is very useful. If hydro could be bundled with either solar is most useful because a lot of solar power is available in India. And that way the tariff will come down and the transmission line will be optimally utilized. So.
And the next element was on fast tracking some of these arrangements, for example, Nepal and Bangladesh. So how do we fast track those elements? The discussion with one of the projects has taken so long now. So how do we fast track?
So multi-country transaction, you are meaning it. So as I said earlier, so as far as Indian transmission network is concerned, there is no problem. So that network is available to transfer power from Nepal to India. But from India to Bangladesh, I said only few megawatt only can flow. 40 to 50 megawatt can flow with the existing setup. If extra power is required to be supplied, then new transmission line is yet to come. Otherwise, some new ideas in the market, which I am not discussing here, so that innovative idea, if is implemented with the, some kind of amendment with the new old infrastructure, more power can flow from India to Bangladesh. Of course, talk is going on in that line. If that happens, then this multi-country transaction will take place immediately. So multi-country transaction to take place, India-Myanmar connectivity is also being strengthened. If that is strengthened, then one day the Nepal power can go to Singapore also. From Nepal to India, India to Myanmar, Myanmar to Malaysia, Malaysia to Singapore. So in 5 years or 6 years will not be supplied. The IPPs in Nepal is supplying power to Singapore. So what is required? Only the platform which is already in place. But one more thing I just forgot to tell, capacity building is required. Now, it is the domain of few people as far as cross-border or multi-country cross-border is concerned. So many people is required to be trained in this domain. To be expert in any game, whether it is cricket or football, you need to know the rules exactly. Similarly, in these rules of this cross-border trade of electricity, you must know the rules properly. Otherwise, you may land into loss. Or you may land into loss of opportunity. That's why capacity building for the participants is very much required. Those who will be finally doing this bilateral or multilateral trade among the neighboring countries. So that way I find this capacity building, then as I said, new line of course is the common thing, but these innovative ideas which is floating in the market, if that is implemented, I think that will give more scope to supply power from India to Bangladesh and future, as I said, right. India, Myanmar, or it could be Bangladesh to Myanmar.
Right.
It could be Bangladesh to Myanmar, then say Malaysia and Singapore.
Absolutely.
So many things can take place in future as far as multi-country transactions are concerned.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. I have a question for Prabal, sir, now. So in terms of, we have heard a lot of numbers right from the inaugural session to the previous two sessions, but being part of NEA and leading the power trade department within NEA, what do you think is a realistic export target for Nepal in the next 3 to 5 years? And just to add another element to that, how does Nepal plan to promote private sector-led project development and its participation in the regional markets?
Thank you, Siddharth. You asked me to say something in the realistic way. What will be the export scenario of Nepal in 3 to 5 years? Actually, being realistic is very difficult. This is hydropower generation, hydropower export. You know that many hydropower projects which are envisaged to be commissioned in a particular year may not be commissioned in the same year. There are many time overrun cases. Many force majeure events might occur and the projects might delay. But considering all those things, we think that Nepal will be a purely power exporting country by the year 2025-26. Within these 3 years, Nepal will be importing power during the dry season months, and Nepal will also be exporting electricity, hydroelectricity in the wet season months. But While talking about the scenario after 3 years, that is in 25-26, when Nepal becomes purely power exporting country, that year, as per our analysis, as per our internal studies conducted by Nepal Electricity Authority, we can sell power up to 2,500 megawatt, equivalent to around 14,000 gigawatt hour annual energy. That means if we consider the tariff of around 10 Nepali rupees per kilowatt hour, that means we will be capable of selling the electricity of around 140 billion Nepali rupees in that 25-26 year alone. And after 25-26, we will continuously be increasing our installed capacity in Nepal. Our independent hydropower producers, IPPs, will be generating more and more hydropower from the under construction projects. And by the year 27-28, we will be able to sell the power up to 3,000 megawatt, and that will be equivalent to 20,000 gigawatt hour of energy. That will be very much helpful for the economic transformation of this country. And likewise, Siddharth, you also talked about IPP's role, IPP's contribution, their participation. I would like to appraise the IPP's role, IPP's contribution in hydropower development in many ways. Since 1992 only, when Nepal's Electricity Act came into existence, IPPs have started showing their role in creating the conducive environment in Nepal in hydropower generation. And today, Nepal's total installed capacity has been dominated by the IPP generation. And more than 7,000 megawatt of hydropower projects, we have already signed the long-term power purchase agreements with IPPs. And more than 10,000 megawatt of hydropower projects are waiting to sign long-term power purchase agreement. And IPP's role should not be limited only in the generation. In the coming year, I hope that IPP will play very much leading role in power trading and also in the development of the transmission line. There are constraints, there are difficulties, and there are many challenges in the development of the transmission lines in Nepal. When we continue augmenting the generation capacity, it demands the transmission capacity to be augmented and to be enhanced. And for that, I think that only the state's role, only Nepal Electricity Authority's role or transmission company's role will not be enough. Our private sector will come forward, and there should be the legal environment to enable the private sector to step into this sector of transmission. Their involvement should be there not only in the development of the domestic transmission system, but also in the cross-border transmission system. The cross-border transmission development has also been very much challenging, particularly from the financing point of view. While building the transmission system between Nepal and India, now the entire transmission capacity has been booked by Nepal Electricity Authority. We can develop the transmission system between Nepal and India in 1 or 2 transmission systems, but not in the case of all transmission lines planned and proposed between the 2 countries. In future, we have to develop, we have to explore other avenues and other modalities also, in which private sector also may be involved, private sector also may contribute by financing. I don't know whether it will be possible or not in the cross-border transmission development to attract climate financing. I don't know, but I think that even climate finance can be possible in developing the cross-border transmission system between Nepal and India, because this will, of course, reduce the emissions. And when the private sector will be involved in the cross-border transmission infrastructure development also, it will be a huge contribution, I think, to move this cross-border power trading forward. And likewise, IPPs of Nepal are also trying their best to be involved in the trading business, power trading business. Some power trading companies have already been incorporated by them. I hope that when new Electricity Act, which is under consideration in Nepal's parliament, when that will be materialized, when that will come into existence, I think that will open the avenue to run the power trading companies also from the private sector. Only the state's role in power trading will not be sufficient. There should be competition, there should be environment for the competitive environment, and for that private sector's involvement is very much important. So they should contribute by being involved in generation business, in transmission business, and in trade business. And that is how we can ensure a sustainable way of cross-border power trading in this region, where Nepal can play very active and very much immense role, because we have immense hydropower potential, we have the probabilities, we can develop hydropower for our domestic consumption and for the prosperity of South Asia region. As Bikram sir has rightly pointed out, this we have to go for long-term commercial arrangements also, and for that we should sign the long-term power purchase agreement. We can go for the competitive bidding, so that price also will be discovered efficiently and effectively, and that will help Nepal to earn lots of revenue from the power trading, and private sector also can play very important role in the nation's building through power trading. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. A lot of encouraging signs and opportunities for the private sector in Nepal, be it transmission, trading, or other segments in the value chain. My next question is for Mr. Dhruv. On the power exchange, we've seen a lot of volatility in the prices, and it has remained high for a sustained period of time. How should countries strategize about maintaining that equilibrium, or controlling their power procurement cost, as well as strategizing their energy sales?
Sure, Siddharth. So, first of all, let us understand what has happened in the last year vis-a-vis previous few years. There were very low demand owing to COVID, as well as the supply was sustainable. So up till 2021, there was hardly any pressure on the prices, and it was able to actually, demand was almost equal to supply. So no pressure on the prices, so it remained subdued. But we ended year 21 somewhere less than 5 rupees. However, we ended last financial year at just shy of 6, around 5 rupees 90 paisa was the average price. So the reason of this particular price rise was largely the imported coal prices being hiked up owing to the Ukraine war, and the other aspects were the e-spot auction, which was happening for specifically coal plants located within India. So that particular e-auction actually stopped, and specifically for just power plant, and it was generalized as an e-auction. So which basically increased the prices of e-spot auction coal by 4 times. So both of these factors eventually led to a largely coal-dependent country like India, and the variable cost of these coal-based thermal plants rose from actually 4 rupees 50 paisa to almost 9.5 rupees, and some even going beyond 10 rupees also, which were largely imported coal-based plants. So since these are more of a geopolitical as well as some arbitration over there in terms of coal, government has already taken a lot of steps in kind of managing specifically this peak season, this summer peak season, by introducing a couple of steps like HP dam, high price dam market has been introduced to basically limit the participants of high price quantum to be limited into that particular segment, so that overall price of the dam market is not impacted per se. And only imported coal-based plants and imported RLNG-based plants are eligible to actually participate in that particular market. So you would see certainly some respite in dam prices from the buying side. In terms of strategizing, Nepal's specifically the diversity of the hydro generation with the dry and wet season is complementing the India's demand. So whenever Nepal has surplus, that's the time when India actually needs that particular energy requirement. So that complementing status will definitely help in bringing in the cash flow of Nepal per se. In terms of strategizing, like I said, we have different markets. So leveraging those markets could be one aspect that can be worked out going forward. And policy advocacy and continuous engagement with bilaterally between the countries is the way forward.
Thanks so much, Dhruv. And it will be really important for Nepal to get on the drawing board and plan for the power procurement, considering the volatility and fluctuations in the prices. My next question is for Bikram, sir. And I'd also request if you can just be mindful of the time, sir. Sorry. What is your sense of the end consumer, and when I say end consumer is DISCOM or the CNI segment, what is their preference for hydropower in their overall energy mix? How do they see hydropower in their overall energy mix, number one? And also, what is the sensitivity of the tariff to the market dispatch in the South Asian context?
See, recently I think it has been discussed that India, we have added a lot of solar and wind. And going forward also, majority of the capacity, maybe even 80% of the capacity is going to be solar and wind. So India itself is developing pump storage projects which are going to provide assured peak of 4 hours or 6 hours. So which is priced at around 6 rupees in India. So price sensitivity is with respect to the time of the day when that power is available. So in peak hours, the price is definitely higher, and in off-peak hours, it is lower. With respect to hydropower as a whole, in India also, it's a vast country, so there is a difference in seasons and load patterns. So in northern India, the seasonal peak and the time of the day peak, both meet the peak requirements of that region. So the states there, Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, UP, the plain states, not the hilly states, the plain states, so their peak comes when hydro generation is maximum seasonally, and their peak requirement comes on that time of the day when hydro is providing the peak hour support, 2 hours in the morning or 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening. So from that perspective, the northern states, it suits their load profile. Now, pricing, of course, is a matter of discovery of that price. And the last agreement with regard to Bhutan, if we discuss only cross-border perspective, so last from Bhutan is, I think, 4 rupees 12 paisa is the tariff for power which is coming from Bhutan. The highest, we have 3-4 PPAs. So the highest one is 4 rupees 12 paisa. And within India, if you see, we have had 2 tenders of hydropower specifically. Participation was very limited. One was a long-term tender, one was a medium-term tender. landed power to the utility was 572 in one and 6 rupees in the other. So that's the kind of tariff for hydro which the utilities and discoms are willing to pay. And they are, of course, much more comfortable if it's a CRC determined tariff. So for our thermal in India, we have gone to completely competitive bidding. Renewable is also again completely competitive bidding. But in hydro, the scope is still there in the cost plus model. So cost plus also, whatever the utilities are giving their mandate as a trading company to us for buying hydropower is around that 412, 440, 430, around that tariff. They are comfortable from that. This tariff I am saying is generator bus bar. See, the difference is the transmission charges difference, because I said in the bidding the tariff discovered is 6 rupees and 5 rupees 70 paisa. That is at the buyer bus bar, and at the generator bus bar, if we take that tariff also to generator bus bar, it is around 440, 450, because transmission charges are a little higher for hydro because PLF is lower. So that's the kind of scenario on the tariff side, and the tariff which the buyers are comfortable with on the Indian side.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for throwing some market insights on the tariff and sensitivity to dispatch. My last question for this session is for Victoria on what would be your recommendations for Nepal to maximize its export potential?
Thank you very much. So I think a couple of things that I mentioned this morning in terms of ensuring that the independent power producers are able to access long-term, reasonably priced financing is really crucial. So to that goes all the bankability issues that I raised, also issues around land, taking security, etc. So some of the issues that are of concern to international investors, particularly given that international investment is going to be required for these scale of projects. I'm not going to be able to rely on the domestic banking markets just for that. Secondly, I think on the infrastructure side, I think we've talked about this already, the expansion of the transmission lines, ensuring that the grid is strengthened so that it's going to be possible to actually export these volumes or potential volumes that we're talking about. And I think it's really exciting that you've already got, in the past year and a half or so, this introduction of a bi-directional flow, essentially, and trade, and be able to push on the policies for that to actually ensure that can work from a Nepalese point of view. So to do as much as possible on the policy side here. Obviously, there are some things which have to go to on regional discussion, and that's something that has to be resolved between the different, power secretaries from around the region. I think we've heard about this long-awaited legislation. I know that there've been inputs to it from many different quarters over the past number of years. So hopefully that will be forthcoming now. I think it's really crucial that the policy is clear, and that there is an opportunity, particularly for private players, to engage in cross-border supply. And then maybe a last point, which picks up a little bit on the other variations of renewables. So even thinking about the possibility we're seeing elsewhere in the region, the utilization of assets, particularly hydro assets, with the potential of combining it with floating solar or using solar or on the land, combining it. So that's also a potential way of maybe bringing down some of the costs as well.
Thanks so much. So will we have the polls now?
Yes, I think we'll head towards the poll. So ladies and gentlemen, if you've been with us this entire session, we had put out 2 questions for the poll. So if you haven't already logged into the app yet, we suggest that you do so. The question is, will Nepal be be able to trade power with Bangladesh in the coming fiscal year? So let's see if we have a lot of positive answers or a bit pessimistic answers. We also have maybe in the options, so if you want to be right in the middle and you want to see where it goes, not really sure. That was the question. Will Nepal be able to trade power with Bangladesh in the coming fiscal year? 10 more seconds for all our distinguished participants of this session to quickly cast in your votes. We've made it really, really easy. All you have to do is download the Power Summit app, and then once you scan, you don't have to log in. If you scan the QR code that's in your card that has been provided to you during registration, you'll be able to directly go to these different platforms through which you'll be able to ask questions, participate in polls, and I think now we'd like to showcase what the polls look like. So we have a lot of no. 36 people have said no, Nepal will not be able to trade power with Bangladesh in the coming fiscal year. We're hoping that they mean the year after that we'll be able to. Then 27 of you have said yes, Nepal will be able to trade power with Bangladesh in the coming fiscal year, and 26 have said maybe Nepal might or might not be able to trade power with Bangladesh in the coming fiscal year. So that is our poll. I hand it over to the moderator to wrap our session up.
Now the poll suggests that the panel here has a lot of work to do to turn the question or answers. Thank you so much for this. I'll quickly summarize the session, which was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, we couldn't take any questions from the audience, but in the mobile app, you have the contact details of all the panelists. Please feel free to contact them on any questions that you may have. But in summary, this session shed light on the significant opportunities and challenges for cross-border electricity trade in the region. The discussions also highlighted the potential for power trade to address Nepal's hydropower potential, some of the aspects of bundling renewable energy, other renewable energy sources with hydro to make it more attractive and to make the dispatch more attractive, ways to enhance energy security and foster the regional development. The experts also shared insights and experiences that have emphasized on the importance of right interventions, be it technical, policy, regulatory interventions, infrastructural interventions, and the potential for collaboration among the neighboring countries, which is immense. We extend our sincere thanks to all the distinguished panelists for their valuable contributions to this session, and to the organizers for hosting this amazing Power Summit 2023. We look forward to continued interaction and work in this field. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Siddharth Mani, Associate Director, Deloitte India, for fabulously moderating this session where we talked about cross-border electricity trade. We discussed how it could be more effective, what are the challenges, and how can we really overcome it. I'd now like to invite on stage Mr. Balram Khatiwada, the Secretary of IPMAN, to kindly present these token of appreciation to our distinguished panelists and to our moderator as well. Firstly, a huge thank you to our moderator, Mrs. Siddharth Mani, Associate Director, Deloitte India, for fabulously moderating this session and definitely bringing out the best from each of our panelists. We'd also like to thank Mr. Dhruv Dhiman, Vice President, Indian Energy Exchange, for his valuable inputs during this panel discussion. We'd also like to thank Mr. Prabal Adhikari, Director, Power Trade Department, Nepal Electricity Authority, for highlighting Nepal's power trade with India and what could be the way forward. We'd also like to thank Mr. Bikram Singh, Executive Vice President, PTC India Limited, where he highlighted some amazing power trade opportunities. We'd also like to thank Mr. Krishna Bandyopadhyay, ex-CEO of NVVN. He talked about the recent trends and past experiences of power trade within South Asia. We'd also like to once again thank Ms. Victoria Delman, Upstream and Advisory Management Infrastructure, for her valuable inputs in this session as well. Maybe a good handshake, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Mr. Balram Khatiwada as well for doing the honor. We'd like to take a group photograph of this wonderful panel, and then we'd like to close this fourth session here at Power Summit 2023.
Welcome to Power Summit 2023.